Our mission to change lives, reach the next generation, and impact the culture with the love and the grace of Jesus Christ. And today I want to talk to you about thankful for thinking. Now, this is the piece that I think many of us need to understand in the realm of our mind, because God created us to be thinkers. He created us to be creative. He created us to be creators of the life in which we are living. And I don't know about you, but this is a midday I'm hoping that many people will watch and will see, because you are every single day creating your life based on what you've thought of yesterday. How we create our life stems from how we think about our life. That's why today I'm thankful for thinking. Now, the question is, when we are created to think, we have to make sure we are channeling and using that gift in a way that is going to be productive and fruitful in our life. Being thankful for thinking can only be something you're thankful for if you are using it to think about things that are beneficial. Now, there's a scripture verse that I love, and it says, whatsoever things are honorable, pure, all of these types of things, think on these things. Apostle Paul is talking to Timothy. So he says, anything that's good, it's of good report, admirable. We need to think on those things. We need to fill our minds with creating deep thinking. And I'm not talking about deep thinking about getting into New Age mysticism and theology and different stuff like that. I'm talking about just thinking about the reality of life, thinking about the choices that you've made, how they've affected your life, and how you can change your mind to move forward in the right direction. There's a proverb that I absolutely love. It says this: as a dog returns to his vomit, so a man returns to his folly. The reason why a man returns to his folly, like a dog returning to its vomit, is because the man hasn't thought enough to understand that what he just did was tearing him down, even though it, quote unquote, was in the moment pleasurable. We get into drugs or alcohol or illicit sex with just anyone or anything like that. Or when it comes to hatred or anger, any of those things left unchecked will be like a person who goes to it, and then in the end, that thing takes more from them. It takes their dignity if you're into sexual illicit relationships. It takes your identity if you're into drugs and alcohol. It takes your ability to just be in cognitive reality. And so when you get high or you get drunk or you get all these other things, what happens is all you're doing is suppressing your ability to think, or the anxiety of thinking. So it's leading you away from the ability for you to create, because you're just numbing something that's supposed to be working. And so that's why the enemy tries to lead us into these temporary highs, these places, because it gets you to step away from thinking. They're depressants. There's different things that get you calm down, different things that get you hyped up. And they're just really a temporary high that is not real. It is not thinking. You see, those will only give you temporary, but a wise person, someone who thinks things through, will see that I've gone to this thing and all it's done is cost me money. It's created something that's a stumbling block in my life, and I can't think clearly. I love in Proverbs 31, it talks about there's a proverb. This is the one it's not written by Solomon. It's written by another person. It was a mother's sayings to her son, the king, and the mom saying to the king was, don't drink. And this is not a midday to tell you to not drink or do any of those things. That's between you and God, all right? But I'm talking about thinking here, okay? And the mom says to the king, who's the son, she says, don't drink, because how, if you are drinking, can you make just judgments? And so a king must make just judgments. And so you, being the king and queen of your life, need to make just judgments. That means you need to think. So there's a blessing in thinking. And so another proverb says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And so for you and for me, we need to think on things that the Apostle Paul says they're admirable, that are of good report, that are going to benefit us. And so I'm going to go back all the way real quick, because I listened to a podcast this morning as a YouTube video actually, by Jordan Peterson, a great man of God. And he's a great in apologetics, theology, psychology, all types of stuff. And so I love the way that he orates things, because he brings it into reality of understanding, even though he talks in such a high way. So what happened in this podcast is, and while he's talking, this is what I'm thinking. So I'm gonna tell you what he said afterwards, but I'm going to tell you what I was thinking while he was saying it first. Back in the day, you can read about different persons' writings, and when it comes to the 18th century or the 17th century, or before the Industrial Revolution and the Technology Revolution, or the Age of Information in which we are living in now, you have these books that are written, and because there was no social media to influence you, because there's no things, you had to read from someone's writing and then create and to think and to ponder it and to create it and to be fruitful with it. And so that's why we can see, especially back in the day, the knowledge base. I'm not talking about technology and sciences, like they didn't have what we have today, but there wasn't as much as we know of the mental health that we have today, because they were thinkers, they were doers, they were appliers, they were thinking in a positive direction. The IQ back in the day was much higher than it is today, not because it's not because they have a better, maybe they did have a better educational system, but either way, they had less technology, but they had a better education. And so they were created to think, not created to remember, all right? So there's a total difference. Our educational system teaches you to remember. Like, I teach you, now you need to remember what I teach you, and I'm going to test you on what you remember of what I taught you. But then after the test, how have we taught our children, our students, the next generation, to think for themselves? Because back in the day, there was no social media, so they were taught to think, all right? But in today's society, we have been giving social media, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all of these types of things, and we're taught to consume. We're taught to take in. We're not taught to think. We're taught to just consume, bring in. But when it comes to that next step, because taking in information is the epitome of thinking, but you got to take that next step and think. How do I take this information that I just ingested? How do I filter it? How do I digest it? How do I think about it? And then how do I apply it into my everyday life? And going into what Jordan Peterson was talking about, and I'm going to finish it up here. He's like, your brain is designed in such a way that you can or have already created neurological constructs, and we call these strongholds, we call these neurological pathways as well, that you have developed in your life, whether it's through trauma, through a good childhood or whatnot. Either way, you and me have neurological pathways that, just like a river in the valley of a mountain takes the path of least resistance, your mind has neurological pathways that takes the path of least resistance that's already been traveled. And if it's a bad neurological pathway, it's going to lead you, like that dog, back to the vomit into which you were in, creating depression, anxiety, creating fear that leads to depression, anxiety, and creates a lack of fulfillment in your life. That's why thinking is important. You are called to take captive every thought that exalts itself against the knowledge of Christ. What is the knowledge of Christ? That I am loved, that I am accepted, that I have a new family, that I've been accepted in God's family, and He loves me even though I'm the one that ran from Him, even though the one that I've denied Him, even though I'm the one that has constantly rejected Him and disobeyed Him. He still loves you. That's the knowledge of Christ. And to those who've been given themselves to Christ, unless they make that mature decision to walk away, God's got them. All right? And so that's where we need to get into this understanding of God loves me, God cares for me. And if we can get past that and we can understand that's my foundation, that I'm in love with God and He loves me. That's the knowledge of Christ. The knowledge of Christ goes beyond that, but that's the basic knowledge of Christ, that I'm accepted in the beloved, all right? That He died on the cross for my sins once for all, okay? And so going beyond that, it's these neurological pathways that try and lead us away from that knowledge of Christ, lead us back into temptation, lead us back into that place that has been the vomit for us that we keep returning back to. But when we submit our lives to God, what happens is, just like when you go to the gym, you're benching, you're pulling, you're doing all these different exercises, you are creating new pathways in your body for your body to respond. If you're 40 and feel like you're 80, get and move it. Get your body in motion. Start doing squats. Start doing, even if it's without weight, do it with your own body weight. On and on we can go. If you don't use it, you lose it. And so when it comes to knowledge, if you don't use it, you lose it. When it comes to thinking properly, if you don't use it, you lose it. That's where this content consumption of Facebook has caused a society of the world to lose it, because we're not thinking. We're just taking in what everybody tells us that we need to learn and to understand, and we're not really thinking about it. That's why many people are confused about their identity because we are told to be confused about our identity. If you feel like a girl but you're a biological man, you're supposed to be a biological woman even though you're a biological man. If you're attracted to the opposite or the same sex, that's okay. It's normal. But guess what? It's not. You need to think about these things. What does the Bible say? How are we to walk in our everyday lives? And so instead of just being fed and believing what you're being fed, think through it. And the more you think through it, the better you're going to be able to have an understanding of it. And when you better understand something, it takes away the fear of it. Okay? Many people don't step out to buy the house, to get a new job, to start a business because they're in fear of what will happen if they do. Okay? And so when you get together and take this spaghetti mess of all these different things and you study it, you walk in it, you do it little by little, you become to a better understanding and you'll do it more properly. Just like last year, we put in a pellet stove in our living room. And it took me forever to install it because I didn't know what I was doing, how to properly vent it, how to put it together. But last night, within the matter of 2 hours, I had a second pellet stove put in our dining room, a temporary one that we'll take in and out. I had the pipe run. I had the window ventilated just right. I got the air intake good to go. And it was less than 2 hours. Weston helped me clean it up at the end, and we were good to go. And our house was 71 degrees this morning because of the extra pellet stove. Because I've done it in the past, I was more confident in doing it this time. So I didn't really have to think through it because I already knew it. And so I was more confident, so there was no fear there. And so with that being said, I just want to encourage you, do this. Think. Think on things that are of good reports. Cast down every thought that exalts itself against the knowledge of Christ. Cast down those things that are that's because you have to think, and what you think, you become. And so it's a blessing to think. And I'm thankful for thinking because that's what gets you out of anxiety. Is thinking and resting in God. All right. I'm going to quote one more thing that I talked about this weekend. Biblical meditation is to fill your mind with God, but New Age meditation is to empty your mind. It's a completely different concept. We are not there or here to empty our mind. We are called to fill it with God and let God teach us what he's always wanted to do from the beginning when he created Adam and Eve. So think on the right things, and it will be a blessing in your life. I love you guys. God bless you, and you have a great rest of your day. In Jesus' name. I'll see you tomorrow. Guess what? Water baptisms this weekend. Hit the share button. It's